In December of 2023, a horror show occurred in the world of gaming. It's a horror show that occurs every December in the world of gaming and is otherwise known as the Game Awards.
If you're fortunate enough to be unaware of the Game Awards, it's a series of trailers and promotional materials disguised as an awards show, and it's the biggest video game awards show of the year. And despite being a predictably putrid exercise in shallow corporate self-congratulation and cringe celebrity cameos, the 2023 Game Awards still somehow managed to surprise by sinking the bar even lower than usual.
Among the inevitable missteps and controversies was this man. He'd been nominated for an award, and people were mad because of the category the game was nominated in. It was Best Independent Game, and there were a lot of people who thought Dave the Diver shouldn't have qualified.
The internet discoursed. It can't be an indie game. It's too big. It had too big a budget. The studio that made it is owned by a company valued at $18 billion. And maybe, just maybe, it's not even that good of a game. Well, actually, the only person I could find making that last claim was one man, going by the name of Brazil, actual Brazilian. It's really fucked up that Dave the Diver is up for that award. Not only is it not indie, but it's also not good.
Harsh words. But as far as I could tell, Brazil, actual Brazilian, was the only one with that opinion. Despite the questionable nomination category, everyone loved Dave the Diver. Everyone except me.
Have you heard of Dave the Diver? If you play games, you probably have. It's the game that came out last year where you dive the ocean and also run a sushi shop where you sell what you've caught. That's how everyone described Dave the Diver to me. It's how the Steam page describes it. It's how I described it to people when I told them about the game I'd just started playing, because, by golly, that is exactly what the game seemed to be. Before I finish that thought, I want to acknowledge that the diving is undeniably the heart of this game, and it features some really effective design decisions. You can't come to the surface for air, which creates an immediate tension as you're always aware you only have a limited time to do what you need to do down there. Oxygen and health are the same metric, so if you get hit, you lose oxygen, which is brilliant because it creates a degree of risk. You might have plenty in the tank now, but 1 or 2 unexpected hits from a predator could send you into critical levels when you're still far from the surface. And this simplicity feeds into the flow. When you're gliding around under the sea, you are captivated by the sea, not constantly looking at the corner of your screen managing a bunch of different stats. The visuals are gorgeous, the movement is satisfying, and it doesn't overload itself with UI intrusions. The restaurant component is also fun and satisfying. It doesn't have nearly as much depth mechanically, but these sections are also short and don't overstay their welcome. And just personally, I really like exploration games that give you a reason to return to base every so often, to craft a new thing, clean up your inventory, or just have a little rest and reset before the next excursion. There's a nice pace here. A satisfying rhythm that beautifully balances comfort and challenge.
This is the game I was prepared to play. I love ocean games, I love sushi. Baby, sign me up! Oh.
After a half dozen hours, Dave the Diver becomes the game it actually is. And because nobody told me what that was, I'm going to tell you now. Farming, fish farming, underwater seaweed farming, several arcade minigames, 3 chase sequences, 2 stealth sections, a ton of boss fights, a bullet hell final boss fight, a Tamagotchi ripoff, a collectible card game, a photography mechanic, seahorse racing and other minigames, 2 sets of currency, several different leveling and upgrade systems,
and more.
Everyone talks about how great the diving is in Dave the Diver, but I have not heard anyone talking about the sheer amount of nonsense this game is constantly throwing at you in between the diving, hour after hour after hour.
I spent the last dozen hours of my time with Dave the Diver wondering when it was going to get out of my way already and just let me enjoy the very good core game. And eventually I realised the answer was never.
The game contains 7 chapters. You are still playing through tutorials in Chapter 5. New mechanics are still being introduced in Chapter 6. I had just purchased my brand new chicken feeder, and no sooner had my little bozos taken a few pecks than I reached the end game and beat the whole thing. It was deeply weird. That beautiful balance, the lovely tension and release of diving and restaurant management, gone. Now I have to constantly pause my adventures so I can weed a garden, or grow seaweed, or play a memory card game.
Gimmicks! You want gimmicks, right?
This is the one that really gets me though. There's a fish farm mechanic, where you can send the fish you catch while diving to a farm, where they breed, so that eventually you can get a steady supply of fish from the farm for your restaurant, and then you barely need to do any diving. In a game about diving!
Let's just stop for a moment and really think about that. Mint Rocket made a diving game with a mechanic that undermines the need to dive. It's like if Death Stranding had a drone you could send out to deliver everybody's packages for you. Why play the game when you could not play the game?
This is even more wild considering that all these extra mechanics are rubbish. This is wonderful. This sucks. It just isn't fun to walk what feels like far too slowly around an ugly farm, filling up a watering can, and then watering... Oh God, I'm getting bored even just describing this. It's just all so pointless. From the card collecting to the mini games, which aren't remotely interesting or fun. Except for the seahorse races, I honestly kind of enjoyed those. And much of it is presented on a smartphone interface, because surely you don't get enough of being overwhelmed with bullshit apps and notifications in your real life already. I haven't yet mentioned the underwater puzzle sections, which are also completely purposeless because you're on an oxygen timer. So the game, understandably, wants you to be able to progress through these quickly so you don't run out of air midway. So they made all the puzzles really easy and thus completely unsatisfying. In some cases, Dave will swim into a room with a puzzle or a contraption and then instantly tell you what to do to complete it.
But folks, I've saved the worst for last.
Does anyone feel like sending me their footage of Dave the Diver's base infiltration section?
Dave the Diver's what?
Yes. Dave the Diver has stealth sections too, because of course it does. There are multiple of them, and the best thing that can be said about them is that they're mercifully short. In this sequence, which exists purely to be a lame Metal Gear Solid reference, you just awkwardly walk through a building. And there's no indicators for things like how far the guard's vision goes, and you can't tell what will get you caught. You can be right in front of them and they won't see you, but you can also be above them and they will see you. I got caught a couple of times just because a guard turned around faster than I thought he would, because the screen is so zoomed in on you that you can't actually observe their movement patterns before you try and proceed. And it's just nonsense, but really, really unfun nonsense. Like, who put this in here and what were they smoking nonsense? I'm amazed all this was included because everyone who loves Dave the Diver talks about how much they love the diving. No one that I can tell particularly loved the farming mechanics or the gambling mini-games. Is there anyone who specifically wants a paint-by-numbers arcade-style rhythm game in their diving game? There's an email app in the game where you receive spam!
Who asked for this? And why did no one at Mint Rocket bring a stop to it?
Oh, also in the end credits, you inexplicably rocket into space. Why space? I don't know. Why not space? Why not be in space for the end credits? Who cares? This sequence could have been set in, for example, the ocean. It could have been like one last dive where you say your final goodbye to the sea by doing a beautiful dance with the sea life. The end credits lit up in dazzling bioluminescence, a celebration of the wonder of the ocean. But somebody had the idea of going into space, so we're in space and nothing means anything.
Does this dev team actually like the ocean? Do they actually like the ocean? Or do they think the ocean is boring? I no longer know. Because they made a game that goes, hey, you, here's the sea. You're a diver? Go in the sea and explore. Isn't the sea beautiful and majestic? Don't you want to just run around a farm collecting chicken eggs? But then go back into the sea and explore, have a good time. But make sure to capture fish so you can farm them so you don't have to go in the sea anymore. Anyway, have fun diving. Diving is great. Diving is great. Diving is great. But wouldn't you rather be playing arcade games on your mobile phone? And I haven't even talked about how incessantly the gameplay of the main story is interrupted by dialogue of such condescension, the likes of which I have never before seen. Behold the glory.
That door is blocked by tree sap. There should be a way to go inside. Alright, I passed it. No, the path is cut off. Other paths are blocked by the tree sap as well. Oh, I can pop the sap using this mutated divine tree fruit. What if I dropped a mutated divine tree fruit onto the door I saw earlier?
The hydrothermal vent is blocking the door. Is there any way to stop the water jet? Nice! It's been stopped! I better pass before it moves again.
The way up is now open. I should bring the divine tree fruit here with me. The door is open. It looks spooky inside. I should be careful. Strange creatures have hatched from the eggs.
There is a door there. If I could melt the mucus covering the door. Oh my god, there's an intact divine tree fruit. Should I put it in that divine tree fruit device? Good, the contraption is working. Maybe I can melt the mucus by projecting the light from this divine tree fruit.
Oh no, the eggs are hatching. I need to get rid of them before I can melt the mucus. Whew, that was the last of them. Let me melt the mucus covering the door. More eggs are hatching. Again, I need to get rid of them before doing anything else.
They are growing in number. I must open the door and escape. Nice! The mucus is all gone.
Dave cannot enter a room without going, there's a thing in this room. Maybe I should do something with it. Or open a door without going, I have now opened the door. I really should swim through it. Also, this is a nitpick, but the game uses the word let's a lot during these moments. As in, a character will say, let's get away quickly, or something, even though they're the only one there. So it doesn't make any sense for them to say let's to themselves. In this 5-minute chase sequence, Dave uses the phrase let's run away twice and let's run away before it awakes twice, which is so awkward it feels like it has to have been a mistake.
I don't have anything profound to say about this. The game's just not well written.
At this point, all that's left for me to ask is, why did no one warn me? Am I the only person who couldn't stand the mechanical bloat, the exhausting distractions, the poor writing and the infuriating condescension that got served up as a side dish to an otherwise very nice diving and restaurant management game? To be fair, all of it only gets really grating in the second half, and I do notice that only a minority of players even reached the final third of the game. I wonder, was a lot of the raving about Dave the Diver done by people who hadn't gotten that far into it?
Because there was a lot of raving. Dave the Diver was an incredibly successful game in every respect. It was a critical and commercial hit and has a score of 90 on Metacritic. It was nominated for 3 DICE Awards and 3 Golden Joysticks, including Best Indie Game and PC Game of the Year. It was nominated for 4 BAFTAs and won 1 for Best Game Design. It was nominated for 3 Developers' Choice Awards, including Game of the Year. And it was nominated for Best Independent Game at the Game Awards. Oh, that's right, people. I am nowhere near close to being done talking about the Game Awards. In fact, I've only just begun. And full honesty here, I have something I've been waiting a year and a half to get off my chest, and it's about another time the Game Awards gave out Best Independent Game. 1 year earlier.
The opening screen of Stray is exactly my shit. It's lonely, ominous, even spooky. One foreboding note lingering in the near darkness. The first scene opens on a thunderstorm in full swing, and after a bit of playful canoodling and catnap, you and your little cat buddies head forth into a world of overgrown stone. Then, a misjudged jump leaves you tumbling, away from your home and your feline family. You limp into a new area, and a strange alphabet informs you that this is the Dead City. Empty grey apartment blocks covered with the same alien script.
It's only been a few minutes, but already I feel like I've seen this before. And I have. It's the exact opening sequence of Rain World.
You know, Rain World. That game you've been meaning to get around to because of that one annoying friend that rants at you about it constantly. The game where you're a little cat guy who gets separated from his family and falls into a mysterious, unrecognizable world of strange glyphs and crumbling infrastructure where human life ended long ago.
Hell yes! A mysterious, frightening, perhaps entirely non-verbal adventure, maybe with survival elements in a hostile world that decenters the player. I am ready. Oh.
After about 15 minutes, Stray becomes the game it actually is. An exceedingly, disappointingly familiar one. You meet a friendly little robot who can speak cat for reasons, and wow, the workshop you found him in has a backpack with upgrades and shit that was made for cats. What a convenient turn of events. And now you can just translate all that weird script into, cat language? So the mysterious alphabet wasn't a meaningful hint to an unknowable game world, There are just symbols on the screen sometimes, because symbols are cool. In terms of narrative and world design, Stray features a fallen cyberpunk world, a walled city, slums, a downtrodden underclass who've never seen the sky. Truly nothing you haven't seen 100 times before. In terms of artistic design, Stray has been praised up and down, but I just don't know. There are major sections of this game where you could not come up with a more bland and derivative artistic choice, from Asian-inspired neon signage for the cyberpunk bits to lots of eyes everywhere for the scary bits. There's no doubt it's all completely gorgeous, but none of it felt interesting or inspired to me.
But the gameplay is even more mediocre.
You jump on things, you push things and then use them to climb onto higher things, you evade the danger blobs by running where they're not, you press a button to fire a laser, you do simple tasks for NPCs. I cannot stress how absolutely run-of-the-mill all of this is. The semi-open areas do have a pleasant verticality to them whereby you can actually find your own way to where you want to go. And these are the best bits of the game by far. But so much of Stray is just thinly disguised corridors where you have to look for the one object you need to interact with or jump on to proceed. It's baby's first puzzle platformer and what can I say? It's fine.
Let me not be accused of strawmanning by failing to acknowledge the game's strengths. Stray is an interesting and innovative game about letting the player see through new eyes and experience the world differently through the body of a cat. That's what it does best, nailing the feeling of being a cat. According to many reviewers and fans. I don't know what game these people were playing. It sounds great. It can't have been Stray, though.
I mostly experienced this world in the same way I experience every other puzzle platformer, by running away from enemies or shooting them, pushing objects around to climb on them, and mostly just pushing the analog stick forward until there's a button prompt or a ledge with yellow paint on it or whatever and pressing X, and doing that again and again until I'm where I want to be. Yes, the cat avatar on the screen is lithe and moves with a lot of grace, but you're not fully in control of the cat. You can't even control your own jumps. You just move to a ledge and follow the button prompt and the cat jumps itself. Which does make the movements more graceful, but it also means I don't really feel like I'm this cat. I feel like I'm watching a cat and having some very minor influence on how it moves around in the world. I think about the games that truly put you into the body of a character with a swift and graceful moveset. Dishonored makes me see my environment like a sneaky supernatural assassin would. Rollerdrome makes me feel like a badass roller skating kill machine. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown sent me into the most blissful goddamn flow states as I just lost myself in the movement. Even derpy-ass games about swinging a hammer to climb around make you feel like a guy manically swinging a hammer around. But in Stray, the only actual catty mechanics are almost completely optional. You can scritch things with your little paws, which the game does manage to find a few uses for in the 7-hour runtime. You can take a nap and you can meow, which are totally optional and which I understand many people really enjoyed and did not at all find to be gimmicks that wore off almost instantly. And by many people, I mean cat people.
Okay. Here we go. None of anything I've just said matters at all because Stray released in 2022 and cat people just lost their minds. Now, cat people, do not come for me. I have no beef with you, and I have no interest in making fun of the probably hundreds of people who have uttered the phrase, "I love Stray because it has a cat and I love cats." Truly, I am happy for you. But even professional game writers who are paid to review games with some kind of impartiality were like, "Who's a cute little cat? Who's a cute little kitty? Yum, yum, meow." 4.5 stars. Do you think I'm exaggerating?
Stray is an engaging and thoroughly charming adventure game, though we fully admit we are biased towards cats. Cat Paws may have had a hand in this review.
Stray fades to black after this short but powerful opening scene. Sure enough, there are tears in my eyes already. You may be thinking that I should get a grip, but I'm a cat person through and through.
Stray isn't just an adventure RPG, it's a psyop made for people who love cats. I realize I have drunk deep from the well of kitty Kool-Aid, and I do it again.
Cat people, man. Bless them. They should not be allowed to review games. Here's my favourite passage from AV Club's William Hughes.
If you spend too long playing it, treating it like a video game, the awe of its animations can occasionally wear off, become commonplace. Take our advice and step away when that happens. Shut the game off for a bit. Come back to it and make an effort to ignore the robots, the squalor, the endless jumping. Just watch the cat move. Watch it be a cat. It's a hell of a thing.
Just ignore the game and the things that are in the game, says the game reviewer. I'm not convinced there wasn't some kind of sorcery involved here. Blue 12 Studio made a game with a cat that was so cute, reviewers forgot how to do their job. But I am undeterred, because there are only 2 people in the world whose opinions on video games mean anything to me. Tevis Thompson and Brazil Authentic Brazilian. And I know at least one of them agrees with me on Stray. Stray wasn't made for me. It was made for cat people. Well, guess what? I'm a bird person, bitches.
Stray demolished the awards circuit in 2022. It got nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards alongside the biggest AAA releases, as well as Best Game Direction, Best Art Direction, Best Action Adventure Game, the Player's Voice Award, and it won Best Independent Game and Best Debut Indie.
And the Game Award goes to Stray. Congratulations, a double winner tonight.
Stray was the most nominated game that year after God of War Ragnarok and Elden Ring. And that's just the beginning. 9 BAFTA nominations, 5 Game Developers' Choice Award nominations, and 1 win. 4 Navigator nominations and 2 wins, and a Golden Joystick for Game of the Year. And the commercial success was very literally off the charts. Stray topped Steam's wishlist, made countless Game of the Year lists, achieved a record-breaking 62,000 concurrent Steam players, and became the highest user-rated Game of the Year on Steam. But here's the one that broke me. Stray won the Steam Award for Most Innovative Gameplay. Sifu is a beat-em-up where you age every time you die. Citizen Sleeper combines tabletop RPG dice rolls with a story of capitalist despair in space. Neon White mixes speedrunning with card game elements. Teardown is a heist game where you literally create your path through fully destructible environments. Stray is a game about a cat. Scritchy, scritch. Pick up the object, press X to jump. This game won Most Innovative Gameplay. I mean, look, people have pointed to the fact that implementing such a successful 3D cat-based movement system deserves praise, and I agree. I have no objections to Stray winning awards for technical achievement, but it won Most Innovative Gameplay, and I have not stopped thinking about that for 1.5 years.
The real question is this. Why am I still so damn salty about it? So I think the cat game and the diving game are overrated. why does it matter? Enough for me to have made a whole video about it. After all, when an overrated AAA game wins some award or other, I just sigh, take another gulp of wine, and add a check to my Game Awards bingo card. But here I am, having all kinds of feelings. Feelings which I think reflect a larger discomfort that rears its head in the what even is an indie game argument we all seem to be having now every few years. So, what even is an indie game?
What is an indie game? Just to throw you a super easy question, really basic. What is an indie game? Should be really simple to answer.
Yeah, it's so simple. I don't like trying to define things.
Out of all games, like a somewhat smaller game with kind of like the spirit of a small team.
Hobbyist games, like people sort of making games not really at a professional level. I guess I think the spirit of it, or at least the part of it that's important to me, is like people making these games in like a sort of non-professional capacity. I don't know though. Now that I think about it, I'm like, I don't know if that's really what I believe. Maybe I just like, maybe indie games are just like games that I like that are made by small teams. The ones I don't like aren't indie.
Okay. Time to get serious. People often refer to any of three different criteria when trying to define indie game. One is the business structure. Is the developer owned and funded by a larger company? Is there a publisher involved in marketing and distributing the game? Then there's the financial aspect. What was the budget for the game? What's its size and level of polish? Finally, there's the artistic side. Is the game experimental, quirky, or inventive? Does it feel personal? Does it go for niche over mass appeal? Does it challenge convention rather than play it safe? But see, even this is contentious. Like, some people reckon you can still be indie if you have a publisher, and others don't. Some think there's no limit on studio size or budget, and others say you can't call yourself indie if you have too many resources at your disposal. Some people consider the artistic aims of the game when deciding what's indie, others don't at all. So, if I may, I'd like to just boil it all down, perhaps a bit simplistically, to what I think is the core attribute of modern indie game development. And that is this. Indie games are everything AAA is not.
And obviously that's not fixed. It changes as times and trends change. But whatever the AAA industry is doing at any given time, indie games have taken pride in leaning exactly the other way. They're rough when AAA is polished, fiendishly difficult when AAA trends easy, cryptic when AAA holds your hand. When AAA looks forward, indies look back. When AAA goes huge and epic, indies go short and small. When AAA goes straight, white and male, indie goes unabashedly queer. When AAA gets stuck in convention, indies are subverting existing genres and even inventing new ones. In today's gaming landscape, AAA studios are pushing up against the limits of how big and costly games can be and still hope to make a profit. That means that right now, indie games, at their best and most necessary, are brief, cost-efficient, and more concerned with executing a limited set of core elements really well than being loaded to the gills with half-assed side quests and pointless mechanics.
Dave the Diver is loaded to the gills with half-assed side quests and pointless mechanics. It has this kitchen sink design philosophy that's like, throw everything at it and see what sticks. It is quantity over quality. the opposite of the design elegance that makes indie games so important and relevant, artistically and culturally.
While most indie games feel like they respect the player's time, Dave the Diver feels way too long and pads itself out with so many mechanics they actively undermine each other. The obnoxious hand-holding feels like exactly what you find in conservatively designed AAA titles that are terrified to lose the player's attention for even a second and have to constantly interrupt gameplay to remind you explicitly what to do next. And there's something about its super polished pixel art graphics that feels calculatedly safe.
The pixel art style is so often used by indie developers because it's cheaper. But this game wasn't made cheap. It likely cost millions of dollars to make, and it was made by a team of several dozen people owned by an $18 billion company. I don't think Mint Rocket had cynical intentions when they adopted an aesthetic commonly associated with small-scale personal art projects and made a polished, expensive, mainstream appeal game out of it. Then again, when has the co-optation of small, authentic art movements and aesthetics by cashed-up corporations ever been a good thing?
Let's talk about authenticity. I'm not making any wild statements by saying that the beauty of a lot of indie games is in how unique and personal they feel.
The thing that I value the most is like quickness isn't right, kind of like quickness and directness of expression. I've thought for a long time that even like working on if there's like a bunch of people who are making something together, the kind of communication necessary for that even like gets in the way of the quickness and directness of expression. Likewise, I think like with Stray, there's tech, and the tech is great, it's cool, but I think that the tech really gets in the way of that as well. Just the more layers of stuff there is between like a person and like kind of like what you experience.
An indie game isn't just a paycheck or lines of code. It's a deeply personal craft, one that bears the creator's distinctive fingerprints. No one but VSI Games could have made Venba. No one but Bennett Foddy could have made Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. And dang it, even if you're the president of the Jonathan Blow Hate Club, you've got to acknowledge that no one but John Blow could have made The Witness.
And because I'm not the current president of the Jonathan Blow Hate Club, although to leave no doubt here, I find many of his takes on politics and current events deeply misguided and frankly extremely cringe, here's a quote about indie games that I happen to think is spot on.
Part of it is about not trying to be professional. Like a lot of people come into indie games trying to be like a big company. What those game companies do is create highly polished things that serve as large of an audience as possible. The way that you do that is by filing off all the bumps on something. If there's a sharp corner, you make sure that's not going to hurt anybody if they bump into it or whatever. That creation of this highly glossy commercial product is the opposite of making something personal.
And here's another quote by Jesper Juhl, highlighting something else about indie games I think is really important.
By emphasizing the small, personal, and simplistic, the indie game movement makes the claim that limited budgets are not a limitation, but rather a better and more authentic way of making games.
Indie games, at their best, turn limitation into strength. They strip away all those layers of stuff, all the need for realism and polish and perfection, allowing the creators to express who they are and what they have to say. They say, hey, we're not just smaller, shittier versions of big games. We're our own weird, wonderful thing. Stray is a smaller, shittier version of a big game. That's literally what it is. It's a AAA game in miniature. It has polish, technical prowess, photorealistic graphics, derivative gameplay that feels much like a copy-paste of every other light puzzle platformer that came before, and a bland mishmash of genre elements that feels like a story outline you could generate with a chatbot. Stray is an incredibly competent game. It doesn't fail at anything it tries to do. It's just that what it tries to do is so...
I gave this game shit before for being incredibly rote in pretty much every respect, but I'm well aware that this is a feature, not a bug. Stray is the ultimate comfort game, designed to be settled into with a cup of tea and a kitty at your feet. This isn't Rain World. It's not supposed to be groundbreaking or innovative. It's meant to be cozy and simple and easy, and you're not supposed to question anything or think too hard about why the robot can speak fluent cat. Just let go and enjoy the pretty lights. Nothing here will challenge you, or threaten you, or scare you, save for a bit of light goo and eggs for set dressing. Everything in the game has this cutesy sheen all over it. Hell, even the flesh-eating bugs are honestly kinda cute. Stray is so sterile, so completely frictionless, so obnoxiously inoffensive. Not a sharp corner in sight for you to hurt your tiny little paw on. I know I called Stray baby's first puzzle platformer, but I don't want to undermine the fact that Stray is actually the game that got some people to pick up a controller for the first time, and that's fantastic. Gaming is for everyone, and I'm not here to gatekeep. But I just also want those people to know that as a game, Stray is okay, and as an indie game, it's downright blah. There are so many truly incredible indie games out there. Before your eyes is a life story where time only jumps forward when you blink, and it's played with a webcam that uses your real-life blinks. Her Story is a detective game where you scrub through archival footage by typing keywords into a search bar to piece together a non-linear mystery. Baba Is You is a block-pushing puzzle game where the blocks you push around are the rules of the level. If Stray was your first proper game and you think it's great, well, strap yourself in because there's a whole universe waiting for you.
But are Stray and Dave the Diver actually, by definition, indie games? My answer is this. It doesn't really matter. Because even if we fully accepted that they are indie games, are they the best indie games of their respective years? Still no, not even close.
Geoff Keighley says these games are indie in spirit, but come on, opulent visuals, ultra polish, style over substance, constant hand-holding, a safe and well-trodden design clearly focused on mass appeal?
Geoff, that is a AAA spirit, no matter how much cutesy fur or pixel art you wrap it up in. Not only are they not the indie spirit, they are in many ways the opposite of the indie spirit. A lot of game award shows have one category dedicated to indie games. Just one. And I think the winner of Best Indie Game shouldn't just be a game that happens to be indie, technically, maybe. It should be the best indie game. The best of what indie games have to offer. What indie games do best. And I'm peeved that even in the spaces we've put aside to celebrate that, we're not really celebrating that. That clip of John Blow was from Indie Game the Movie, a film that would lead one to believe that indie games are all 2D retro platformers developed by youngish white North American men with substantial funding behind them and who all shoot to superstardom following massive critical and financial success. While it is a compelling watch, it's also hilariously unrepresentative of the indie game dev scene. And it must be said that the decision to feature these 4 developers was certainly a choice, considering how important a role marginalised communities have played in establishing the modern indie scene, in telling stories and tackling themes ignored by the mainstream industry. We happily throw around terms like unique and experimental when awarding indie games.
Independence allows a game to go a little bit more wild, become a bit stranger, and the freedom to break boundaries.
But we're not really walking the walk, are we?
Instead, year after year, the tastemakers of the industry dish out awards to relatively safe indies. And that's by the incredibly stretched definition of indie. The ones with polish, the ones with a substantial budget, the ones with mass appeal. Then they say words like risky and boundary breaking and pat themselves on the back for celebrating the indie spirit. The Game Awards' own website says the best independent game category is for achievement in a game made outside the traditional publisher system. And then lists the publishers for 3 of the nominees. It's right there, guys! Personally, I find it incredibly strange that the industry has co-opted the language of celebrating quirkiness and experimentation and used it to reinforce conventional ideas of what a good game is, ironically further marginalizing works and creators that are arguably much truer embodiments of the indie spirit.
We're not just arguing over terminology here. In the cutthroat pit of knives that is the video game development space, this valuing of highly polished indies with mainstream appeal means that more games like these will get attention and startup funding that could go to much more artistically interesting indies. Indies that are doing what indies do best. Small studios already struggle for any kind of recognition, and we're forcing their games to compete in the same award category as subsidiaries of billion-dollar companies? We're really doing that? I think some people will say that I've been too harsh on Stray and Dave the Diver in this video for saying they're boring and overrated. After all, aren't most AAA games kind of boring and overrated? Am I holding these indie titles to a higher standard? And is that really fair? To this, I want to say that I don't think Stray and Dave the Diver are any worse than all those overrated AAA games getting released every week. I think they're about the same. And that's the problem. Indie games shouldn't be the same as the big budget industry. Their main artistic purpose is to be unlike the big budget industry. I don't hold indie games to a higher standard. I hold them to a different standard. In many ways, I'm much more lenient towards indies. I'm more than happy to overlook graphical wonkiness and even game-breaking bugs in an indie game, if the core design is interesting. And I think it's a mistake to expect an indie game to tick the same boxes that AAA games do. That would only reinforce one singular idea of what makes for a worthwhile game, in an industry that already has far too narrow a view about what counts as worthwhile. Not to mention what counts as innovative. Honestly, I'm not sure most gamers even know the meaning of the word. In any case, it's not really Stray and Dave the Diver that I'm angry with. It's this hegemony, the games industry's self-replicating dullness, which has now, I fear, started to seep into the indie space too. And all of it was foreshadowed. Check out this quote from an article by Nadav Lipkin that's a little over 10 years old.
With increasing co-optation, games become labeled indie, especially in mainstream press outlets, that would otherwise puzzle members of the community, a practice that is uncommon at the moment but will unquestioningly grow in practice as indie dilutes over time.
And this exact sentiment came up in both the interviews I did for this video. The sense that the word indie is becoming kind of nonsensical, as big money comes into the scene and transforms a large chunk of it into something that feels closer to the mainstream.
It feels very confusing to identify it as an indie. Well, like, as someone who was like an indie dev like 10 years ago, what it means to be one has changed so much, because now it's like, okay, like people who make like a ton of money, I'm trying to think of like an example that's easy. Like Hades, like is like an indie game, but like way back in the day of like what it was to make an indie game was like, it felt like much smaller operations. It was just like, oh, like I'm just like a person and I like made some stuff. And now it's like, I don't know, it covers like a wider range, and now the term I feel is like less useful.
I don't know what the demographics are, but I feel like most indie games are trying to find a publisher and get published on Steam and consoles and stuff like that. I feel like there's one of my friends said it almost feels like there's two different scenes. There's like the freeware people who make like freeware games and post them on itch or something like that, or on their personal sites, and then people who are still indie but they're doing it commercially and they're trying to find a publisher. And yeah, and it almost feels like those are just two different worlds. Like they're both indie games, but they have completely different sets of values and like what they're striving for and so on.
I know this is not the end of the world, but I can't say I'm enjoying seeing the indie scene fragment like this, especially when I know which fragments will be the ones that continue to succeed and which ones will sink even further into obscurity. I don't like the message we're sending when we give Best Indie Game awards to games like these. That the best thing about indie games is that they're just like AAA games, only maybe shorter. And I'm worried about the effect all this will have on the game development scene, that it'll make the environment even more challenging for indie devs making the kinds of games that are the reason I'm still in this hobby.
So back in like 2012, so there were those like successful commercial indie games like the ones featured in Indie Game the movie, but I feel like that was sort of a smaller phenomenon. That was like there were a few people who were getting those big hits, and the sort of the freeware scene was like a lot more active. Like, and the other thing is that there were websites like Free Indie Games and like indiegames.com and stuff like that there were a lot more places that were covering freeware games and posting about them, and that's become a lot more rare these days. Like news website, like there aren't as many like dedicated blogs for it, and it's also a lot more rare, I think, for news websites like big gaming news websites to cover anything that's like doesn't have like a publisher backing it, unless it's like it goes viral or something like that. But yeah, it feels to me like there's not as much like attention on freeware games as there used to be back like 10 years ago.
I hold no illusions that Geoff Keighley is watching this video, and I don't have much hope that this trend can be turned around. Then maybe it's a mistake to even have hope that an industry as huge as what the video game industry has become will ever have space again for the kinds of indie games that I love.
I've been thinking about it as maybe a cursed problem, which is like the games industry, in big scare quotes, right, is like a very big volume. Like it's like this like huge object. And I feel like the solution is like, if that's global, like the solution is local. The solution is like smaller objects, smaller communities. And it's like, you can't take you can't have both of them. You can't have the huge games industry and also have it like have the quality of being small. And like you can't take the action of like you can't I wish I had like better words for this. Like I feel like a lot of the issue, like I feel like a lot of the issues come from everyone wanting to make like a big global change and sort of ignoring the sort of like smaller communities or like their local environment or just these little zones. And they're like, okay, like I want to take these like big actions. And so you kind of, if you want to make, and this isn't like about farmers markets. I don't mean local in terms of physical. I just mean like small, like cool communities of people that are like of a size that are still capable of being cool, where people actually know each other and care about each other. And like I think that you don't accomplish those things by trying to impose it on the large scale. You kind of have to like let go of the large scale and go, okay, how do I make a nice space for me and my 100 acquaintances?
Maybe the divide between small and big budget indies will continue to increase until they no longer have anything in common. Maybe the days of large publications covering small, heartfelt indies is reaching its end, as the mainstream industry bubble continues to float away to whatever realm it is where Dave the Diver deserves an Independent Game Award nomination, and the small indie scene, if it even continues to call itself that, will keep doing what it's always been doing, albeit possibly fighting harder than ever for recognition, coverage, and funding. But if Drocken's right in what he said to me, if that's the way things are heading, then the only real solution is to accept that there's nothing left for us in that cursed bubble. And abandon hope for it entirely. Accept that those gods aren't listening, and that our future must be in cultivating tiny, cozy communities. My own cozy community on YouTube is a small one, but I like to think we value the spirit of indie here, and that we're all doing everything we can to support the little people making little games that mean a lot. So here's a reminder of what you can do. Buy indie games, and buy them full price if you have the means. Leave a comment below with your favourite underrated indie gem, and consider supporting me and other channels like mine on Patreon, where, by the way, you can get access to the full interviews I showed clips of here. And let's all get a little louder about why indie games matter. Here are a few of my mates doing just that.